Ridmark Arban was the constable of Talion, the right hand of the High King of Andomhaim, which meant he often had to travel around the realm. That had been one of the duties of the constables ever since Andomhaim had been founded by Malahan Pendragon nearly 1,000 years past. But Ridmark had a method of travel that his predecessors as constable had never been able to use. "We're ready," said Ridmark, looking back at the rest of his party. "Aye, my lord," said Sir Tegan. Ridmark considered his escort for a moment. It was the morning of the 7th day of February in the year of our Lord 1500, the sky overcast, the air a bit chilly. At least it was chilly by the standards of the people of Talion, who saw snow once or twice a year, if that. To the people of the Northerland it would have felt like a brisk spring day. To the south rose the white walls of Talion, the seat of the High King of Andomhaim, the oldest and strongest city in the realm. Within the walls Ridmark saw houses and rooftops, and the towers of churches. The tower of the magistracy and the castra of the sword-bearers stood tall and strong within the walls, and the citadel rose atop its crag, the tower of the moon soaring like the blade of a white sword against the grey sky. To the west flowed the river Moeller, over a mile wide on this final stage of its journey to the southern sea. Ridmark could just make out the sea beyond Talion, a broad band of steely grey that covered the horizon. The sea had been in his thoughts more and more of late, or more precisely, the foes that dwelled beyond the sea. 20 mounted knights waited behind him, clad in chainmail and leather. Over their armour they wore blue surcoats adorned with Ridmark's badge, a stylized silver shield. Behind them waited 2 wagons, each drawn by a pair of horses and driven by squires. Sir Tegan Aurelius was at the head of the horsemen. A distant cousin of the Dukes of Caer Tigris, he had no land or prospects to obtain it, so he had entered Ridmark's service as a household knight. He was a wiry young man of about 25, dark-haired and sombre-faced. Half Ridmark's age, come to think of it. He was getting old. But Ridmark liked the dour young knight, and Tegan had proven reliable. He had given Tegan more responsibility, and the young knight had handled it well and without complaint. "Then we shall ride to Castoreum," said Ridmark. It was usually a 3-day ride from Talion to Castoreum, not counting ferry time over the river, but Ridmark intended to be there within moments. He drew Oathshield from its scabbard. The sow-blade was unique. Most of the sow-blades borne by the sword-bearers were silvery grey in colour, forged of a metal that looked like steel but was far stronger. A single glowing soulstone set into the weapon's tang. Oathshield, by contrast, was wrought of blue metal, and it bore 2 soulstones, one set into the tang, the second into the pommel. The twin soulstones meant that Oathshield had powers beyond the reach of normal soul-blades, powers of which Ridmark was the custodian. Sometimes it made him uneasy, knowing that those powers rested in his hands and his alone, bound only by his conscience and his scruples. Still, his need for those powers was great, for he served the High King of Andomhaim, and the High King had many enemies. In his life Ridmark had fought in and at times helped win the great wars against the Frostborn, the Sovereign, and the Heptarchy, and after all that suffering and death, after all the men slain or maimed and wounded, the realm still had enemies. Maybe that was a bitter truth. War was the natural order of things, and peace only happened by accident. Or perhaps he was thinking too damned much, which seemed to happen more and more as he got older. Enough, there was work to be done, and he was the constable of Talion. It wouldn't do to become lost in thought while his knights stared at him, waiting for him to act. Ridmark reached for his bond to Oathshield and sent his will into the sword. A curtain of grey mist rose before him, about 20 feet tall and 20 feet wide. The mist rippled and flowed, glowing a little with an inner light, and then dimmed. Through it Ridmark saw a coastal road, the sea on the left, and forests and fields on the right. "Go," said Ridmark, and he tapped his horse's flanks and rode through the magical gate. It was one of his soul-blade's powers, one that he had found particularly useful. With the power of Oathshield, Ridmark could open magical gates and ride through them, travelling vast distances in the blink of an eye.